Made with Spoken. Celestial Convergence Dragons of Vacari No. 3 by T.A. McEvoy. Digital narration, performed by multiple digital voices. In Lyra'el, silence clung to the city like a breath held too long, stretched taut and trembling. The crystal towers shimmered in the pale light of dawn, scattering shards of brilliance across the valley below. The beauty of the suspended bridges, their lattice of silver threads catching the sunrise, belied the storm gathering just beyond the horizon. The wind that wound between spires carried no birdsong, only a low, expectant hush, as if the city itself had gone still in anticipation. Across the dragon terraces, riders stood beside their bonded companions, armor polished to a cold gleam. The platinum dragons were already in formation, their massive wings half unfurled, eyes reflecting the silver wards that shimmered faintly at the city's edge. Each dragon radiated power, their light-forged shields interlacing in a lattice of brilliance, while the elders and enchanters chanted in steady cadence. Their voices braided with the city's eternal hum, weaving light into a dome that wrapped Lyra'el like a gleaming fortress in the sky. Within the healing sanctum, the air was taut with purpose. Medics darted between rows of prepared cots, arms laden with linen rolls, crystal vials, and bundles of herbs. Alchemists stirred luminous draughts in glass vessels that pulsed like captive stars, while apprentices whispered spells of mending under their breath. Every movement carried urgency, but not panic. They knew what was coming. They had been preparing for this day their whole lives. On the eastern flank, Prince Gylon stood tall in his gleaming armor, hand resting on Aurelia's ridged neck. The crystal bow lay strapped across his back, its string vibrating faintly, resonant with her breath, as though the weapon had already chosen the battle's rhythm. Aurelia's crystalline scales caught the sun, scattering radiant shards of light into the darkening sky.
"You'll likely need to break their shadows when they come,"
Aurelia murmured, her voice like wind chimes stirred by a distant breeze.
"Blinding light may be our best chance to shatter their formations."
Gylon's jaw tightened. His heart pounded in time with the bow's glow, but his eyes never wavered from the horizon.
"Then I'll be ready."
On the western edge, Thalorian's silhouette cut a proud figure astride Verdantia. The arbor blade was already drawn, its emerald edge humming with a song older than the city itself, a resonance that seemed to draw strength from the roots of the mountains below. Verdantia's great wings flexed, shaking frost from their golden-green feathers.
"If they seek to breach the wards from the ground,"
Verdantia rumbled, her voice like leaves whispering in a storm,
"then here, amid the trees of the singing forest, we will break them. Let their darkness falter against the wild."
"We will not yield,"
Thalorian vowed, raising the arbor blade. His words were not loud, yet they rang clear through the bond he shared with his dragon, carried to the hearts of those who stood beside them. High above, Kimras carved a steady path through the heavens, his vast golden wings cutting through the dimming sky. Morning light rolled down his scales like rivers of fire, each beat of his wings reverberating with ancient power. On his back, Keisha sat poised, her red hair whipped by the wind, her hands glowing faintly with gathering magic. Her green eyes fixed on the horizon, where shadows gathered like a wound in the sky. She spoke no words, but her silence burned with iron resolve. Amara swept alongside them, her amethyst wings casting arcs of violet fire as they caught the dawn. Ong leaned low against her neck, the dragon lance strapped to his back gleaming with deadly promise. His eyes scanned the rolling clouds with the keen focus of a man who had fought, bled, and chosen to belong to this place. Amara's tail flicked in irritation, her voice ringing sharp in the minds of those near her.
"The air stinks of their corruption already. My head aches from it. Disgusting."
Between the noble dragons soared the celestial beings, radiant, riderless, their vast wings spanning the sky like banners of living light. They circled above the city as though forming a second, higher firmament, their silver brilliance rippling in harmony with Lyra'el's wards below. On the highest spire, Kalorn stood at the nexus of magic, robes aflame with woven light. His arms rose, palms outstretched, as streams of silver fire bled from the stones into the air. His voice thundered through the link stones, unwavering and sure.
Hold your positions. Watch for any fracture points. If you see even the faintest flicker, speak it.
From the sanctum balconies, the citizens pressed together, their faces pale but unbroken, lips moving in silent prayers to gods who might no longer listen. No one fled. None looked away. They knew if Lyra'el fell, there would be no refuge left. Then the wind died. The dawn dimmed. A crawling tide of blackness crept across the horizon, coiling and seething with venomous intent. The air itself shuddered. The first notes of battle struck like a drumbeat in the bones. From the south, the shadows split wide. Voraxia tore through the veil, her wings unfurling like serrated scythes of smoke, her onyx scales glimmering with corrupted light. Her jagged smile gleamed as she dove, a predator savoring the kill before the strike. To the east, the horizon bled crimson. Vorathos surged upward, vast and terrible, her body wreathed in burning mist. Each beat of her wings smeared fire across the sky, a herald of ruin. Behind them, an onyx host poured forth dark dragons by the dozen, their wings blotting out the light, their maws spilling flame blacker than night. The storm had come for Lyra'el. The crystal city shone like a beacon against the encroaching dark, silver wards blazing at full strength. Every soul knew it then. This day, the sky itself would decide their fate. Voraxia's gaze swept the battlefield until it locked on Keisha astride Kimras. Her jagged lips twisted into a sneer, her eyes alight with cruel delight.
"You're back for another beating, elf?"
Keisha's laugh rang out, fierce and unshaken, her green eyes blazing like emerald fire.
"Voraxia, you're still full of hot air."
Kimras answered before she could say more. His roar cracked like golden thunder, rolling across the heavens, making the silver bridges of Lyra'el shiver, as though they might splinter apart under the force. Light shimmered in waves from his scales, each pulse a declaration of defiance. On the eastern horizon, Vorathos's abyssal gaze was fixed upon Amara and Ong. Smoke and flame curled from her spined maw as her voice ground out like boulders breaking beneath a volcanic tide.
"Oh, you two again. I thought you'd learned your lesson."
Amara's wings snapped wide, their vast span searing the sky with violet flame. Sparks bled across her scales in jagged arcs as her mind voice cut cold and amethyst sharp through the storm.
Yes, but spare me your blunders. I forgot how much I despise the last dark dragon who whined. I've no wish for another headache.
Ong let out a short, rough laugh, a sound like steel grating on stone. He leaned low against her neck, his hand brushing her scales with easy familiarity.
"Still got that sting, Amara."
Above them, the heavens writhed. Light and shadow slammed together in turbulent waves, the sky itself shuddering as though caught in the throes of some vast and merciless storm. The dance had begun. Radiantus surged forward, his vast wings unfurling like banners of living silver. Talira rose proud upon his back, her hair streaming behind her, as though it, too, had caught the dawn. With a single sweep, Radiantus turned the morning air into a gale, his voice thundering across the heavens, ancient power woven into every syllable.
"This is the only warning you will receive. Leave Lyra'el now, or face certain defeat. You will not breach these skies."
Voraxia's hiss unfurled like poisoned silk, sliding across the battlefield.
"We will not leave. It is you who will fall, Platinum Fool."
Vorathos answered with a roar that split the air. Abyssal fire coiled along his spine, dripping molten streams that scarred the sky itself.
"Abyssal Flyke engage the Platinum and Radiantus. Drown their shine in the deep."
Then Aurelius descended. The celestial dragon carved a vast arc across the heavens, trailing a river of starlight that burned brighter than dawn. His voice carried not as thunder, but as a calm, resonant, unshakable prayer.
"You underestimate the light, Shadow Queen. It will not yield to darkness. Light was not given to bow. It was given to endure."
The words struck the defenders like a benediction, echoing through the linkstones and into every heart that stood upon Lyra'el's terraces. At his vow, the horizon tore apart. The dark host erupted, a torrent of wings and fire. Dozens of shadowed dragons surged forward, their roars ripping the sky, their maws vomiting flame blacker than night. The air quaked with their descent. The first collision came like the crash of worlds, silver and gold, colliding with smoke and abyssal fire. The storm broke in an explosion of light and shadow that painted the heavens in ruin and radiance. Meanwhile, at the barrier's pinnacle, Caelorn stood, rooted at the nexus of the weave. His staff blazed with caged brilliance, streams of power flooding from the crystalline heart beneath the city into his veins. His arms trembled as he chanted, ancient words burning across the air in a tongue older than memory. Silver fire laced itself into the trembling dome, flaring bright once more. From the eastern quarter came a shout through the linkstones.
Caelorn, the ward falters, the weave is tearing.
Caelorn spun, robes snapping in the wind as he sprinted across the crystalline platform. Ahead, a section of the barrier wavered like a dying star, its threads unraveling into sparks. He slammed the butt of his staff down, and light flared outward in a torrent, knitting the strands together. The dome shone steady again, but the effort drove him to his knees. Sweat traced molten lines down his brow as he clutched the staff in both hands. A watcher above the sanctum exhaled shakily.
It's holding again.
The relief shattered in an instant. A massive shadow dragon slammed into the barrier, claws screeching against the silver weave. Sparks cascaded like meteors, the sound a shriek that pierced bone. One of the platinum dragons hurtled forward in a flash of steel and fire, its rider lowering his spear as they struck the beast with a crash that lit the sky. The shadow recoiled, wings flailing as it tumbled back into the maelstrom. Caelorn's knuckles whitened on his staff. His chest heaved, each breath ragged. Every word of power scraped raw from his throat.
I do not know,
He whispered into the storm, the confession meant for no ears but his own.
how long we can keep this up.
High above, Voraxia's fury boiled over. With a guttural snarl, she tore from her quarry and wheeled through the turbulent air, her colossal wings leaving a wake of roiling smoke. Her shadow streamed behind her like a living curse, staining the light as she arrowed toward Radiantus and Tahlira. But Keisha's eyes narrowed, emerald fire sparking in their depths. She leaned low against Kimras, her voice a fierce whisper along their bond. The ancient golden dragon responded instantly, banking hard into the path of the shadowed empress. His wings cleaved the storm winds, and his throat kindled with molten radiance. Then he opened his jaws and poured forth a torrent of searing gold, a sunburst unleashed across the sky. The blaze struck Voraxia head-on, swallowing her in fire that cracked the very air and lit the silver bridges below in molten reflection. The shadow dragon reeled, shrieking as golden flames scalded her onyx scales. For a heartbeat, her form wavered, shadows peeling back, exposing a glimpse of something vulnerable beneath the corruption. Through that breach surged Aurelia, crystalline wings flashing with razor light. Gylon rose in his saddle, the crystal bow thrumming in his grip, its pulse synchronized with his heartbeat and Aurelia's. He drew back the bowstring, light condensing into a single blazing arrow, pure and unbroken. Every shred of his will poured into that radiant point.
Now!
Aurelia's cry rang like 1,000 glass bells. The arrow flew. It struck Voraxia's shoulder with a shattering crack. Light exploded outward in a storm of crystalline shards, each fragment bursting into a sunflare that burned across her flank. Voraxia screamed, whipping her massive tail in fury. The strike missed Aurelia by a breath, but the force ripped the air apart, hurling glittering fragments of broken shadow and crystal into the wind. Aurelia did not falter. With a roar like chimes turned to war horns, she unfurled her wings in full and loosed a volley of radiant shards. They cut through the storm's darkness, embedding deep into Voraxia's hide, each strike igniting a flare of searing light. The heavens themselves trembled with the collision of brilliance against the void, devotion against malice, as the actual battle for Lyra'el roared into being. Radiantus veered left, a sweep of his vast wings scattering silver fire across the sky. He surged into the path of 3 descending dark dragons, intercepting their charge toward the sanctum's ridge. His talons tore through shadowed flesh, rending one beast from the air, its scream dissolving into a trail of black flame. And then Vuarus struck. She descended like a mountain of living abyss, her colossal wings dragging nightfall behind them. Crimson mist bled from her ridges, abyssal fire coiled in her throat. Her roar hammered the heavens, as if the sky itself were stone shattering under her fury. Radiantus rose to meet her, his platinum form a blazing star against her darkness. His chest burned with celestial fire, and in one devastating exhalation, he loosed a beam of silver radiance. It met Vuarus's torrent of crimson flame in midair. The collision tore the heavens open. Light and shadow smashed together in a blinding detonation, shredding the clouds into ribbons. Shockwaves rippled across the valley, shuddering through every tower of Lyra'el. Vuarus circled, smoke streaming from her fanged maw. Her voice was a growl of contempt.
You shine so brightly, Platinum. Let us see how long your light endures when I blot out the heavens.
Talira raised the light-forged shield, its surface blazing with sacred script that shimmered like molten emerald. When she lifted it high, the runes flared in unison with Radiantus's blazing scales, their powers intertwining, amplifying one another until light itself seemed to take form. The shield expanded into a radiant dome that wrapped around dragon and rider, a living fortress of faith and fire. Vuarus's abyssal fire struck like a tidal wave, crimson flame and shadow slamming against the barrier. The dome blazed brighter, searing the darkness until it fractured, splintered into sparks, and dissolved into nothing. More than a shield, it was a vow made visible, and an unbreakable bond forged between Radiantus and his rider. Radiantus's eyes blazed, silver fire pouring from their depths.
Try and fail.
His roar boomed across the battlefield, deep and unyielding, echoing like war drums across the crystal peaks.
You will not face me alone,
he thundered.
Vacari stands with me.
Through the bond, his call ignited hearts. From every quarter of the sky, the noble dragons answered, their voices rising in a chorus of defiance. Golden, emerald, amethyst, and silver tones layered together, a storm of song that shook the heavens and made the city's crystal towers sing in resonance with their roar. From below, the heavens split with twin streams of emerald and violet fire. Verdantia and Amara surged upward together, flanking the abyssal behemoth in a storm of color and flame. On Verdantia's back, Thalorian held the arbor blade aloft, its emerald edge pulsing with the wrath of the wild. Opposite him, Ong rose in the saddle, the dragon lance gleaming like a shard of vengeance across his back, as Amara's wings painted the sky in violet fire. Between them, Keisha pressed her glowing hands to Kimras's golden scales, weaving threads of protective magic into a barrier that shimmered like living glass around them all. Vuarus wheeled above, her vast shadow blotting the horizon. With a guttural bellow, she hurled herself forward in a second strike. Her maw yawned wide, abyssal fire coiling into a spiral of crimson death that promised to consume everything it touched. Ong rose to meet it. Braced against Amara's neck, he lifted the dragon lance. His cry rang out, harsh and unyielding, like steel grinding across stone. He hurled the weapon with all his strength. The lance blazed as it flew, a streak of violet and silver that buried itself beneath Vuarus's armored shoulder. The weapon sank deep, piercing the abyssal flesh. The shadow dragon's shriek tore across the sky, raw pain laced with fury. Black ichor rained down, sizzling like acid, where it splashed against Lyra'el's glowing wards. Verdantia seized the moment. With a resonant bellow, her emerald wings folded, and she plummeted in a lethal dive. Thalorian's arm swept the arbor blade in a perfect arc. Its radiant edge sang as it sliced through a writhing tendril of shadow spilling from Vuarus's wound. The cut ignited with green fire, a wave of living light bursting outward and slamming into the dark dragon's chest. The impact forced Varathos back, her massive wings thrashing as she fought for balance amid the shredded clouds. The defenders roared their defiance, voices carried on the wind. For the first time, the abyssal dragon faltered. Across the battlefield, Aurelius rose with his celestial kin. Vast silver wings cut the darkened sky, each beat scattering cascades of starlight. Together, the Celestials formed a living constellation, arcs of brilliance weaving radiant shields as they crashed into the onyx swarm head-on. High above, Varaxia wheeled, her wings stretched with terrible grace, smoke coiling from her form like banners of war. The air itself chilled as her presence spread. Her voice ripped through the storm, venomous and triumphant.
Let me show you the black sun.
From her chest, darkness erupted. A vortex spiraled outward, swelling into a sphere of writhing shadow that devoured the light. The heavens dimmed. Stars winked out, as though swallowed whole. The world sank beneath an endless eclipse. Even Lyra'el's crystalline hum faltered, muffled beneath the suffocating shroud. But Aurelius did not bend. His massive form burned with inner radiance, scales flowing like molten silver. He soared higher, cutting into the darkness, his voice steady as a hymn.
Let the skies remember their light.
His chest blazed, and with a thunderous exhale, he released a pulse of pure celestial fire. A spear of brilliance lanced upward, striking the roiling heart of the black sun. Light met shadow. The collision detonated with apocalyptic fury. Silver radiance tangled with crimson flame, shredding the swirling shroud into ribbons of smoke. Fissures of brilliance cracked through the false night, tearing holes where daylight poured through in burning shafts. Each rupture revealed terrified faces on Lyra'el's terraces, momentarily bathed in silver glow. Still Varaxia pressed forward, her silhouette a vast maw of hunger and hate. Her wings hammered against the radiant gale, shadow colliding with starfire. The black sun writhed and clawed at the sky, and still Aurelius burned brighter. Below, Gailen staggered beneath the weight of that clash. The oppressive dark clawed at his spirit, dragging at his breath, smothering his courage. Yet the crystal bow pulsed steadily in his hands, its rhythm echoing Aurelia's song. Her presence surged through their bond, fierce and unyielding, lending him her strength. Together, he thought, always together. He whispered through clenched teeth.
Let them see.
The bow answered. Radiance bloomed between his fingers, an arrow of pure intent drawn from the marrow of his will. He loosed, and the shot became a spear of sunfire tearing through the dark. It struck the heart of the black sun. For a heartbeat, the void held, seething. Then the spear fractured, erupting into a storm of light. Shards of brilliance cascaded outward in blinding waves, ripping through the coiling shadows. The black sun buckled, fractured, and burst. The suffocating night ripped apart, light shattering through in radiant torrents. The abyssal host shrieked as the storm consumed them. Dark dragons reeled, their wings buckling, as their forms tumbled through the air in chaos. Whole ranks scattered, blinded by radiance searing through their shadow veins. With a crystalline cry, Aurelia folded her wings and dove, streaking like a falling star. The celestial dragons plunged with her, a storm of silver and light carving a radiant path straight through the broken darkness. Varaxia shrieked in fury, twisting against the unraveling eclipse. Her power bled away, the black sun collapsing in shreds of smoke and dying sparks. Her hateful gaze locked on Gailen. High above, Aurelius met his eyes, white fire burning deep within his gaze. His voice carried over the battlefield, a sonorous hymn that rang louder than the storm itself.
Well struck, Prince. The stars themselves bear witness.
Meanwhile, Varathos wheeled back toward Radiantus, rage boiling in every thunderous beat of her vast wings. The jagged wound beneath her shoulder still poured black fire, dripping like molten tar, yet she drove herself onward with reckless ferocity. Abyssal magic seethed from her talons in storm-born ribbons of crimson and shadow. Her roar was a cataclysm, mountains collapsing in sound, the sky itself quaking with her fury. But Radiantus was waiting. The platinum dragon flared his wings wide, silver brilliance cascading like waterfalls of light. His gaze burned steady, fixed upon her descent. Tahlira's cry rang fiercely at his back, a clarion call that sharpened his resolve.
This ends now.
Radiantus's chest ignited, molten light surging to his throat. He exhaled, unleashing a column of celestial fire that tore the heavens apart. The beam was pure wrath and purity entwined, and it did not blaze alone. From across the chaos, Aurelius wheeled in mid-air, his own radiance building until the sky itself seemed to hold its breath. He joined his light to Radiantus's, and the twin torrents fused into a single devastating spear of starlit fury. The heavens ignited. The combined strike hammered into Varathos's onrushing darkness, tearing her abyssal fire apart thread by thread. Shadow writhed and shredded under the assault. Silver fire and starlight carved across her vast chest, across wings black as midnight, peeling away scale and sinew until streams of sizzling ichor rained onto the glowing dome below. Varathos screamed, her voice a storm of rage and anguish that echoed across the mountains. She faltered mid-dive, twisting violently as the light forced her back, driving her upward and away. Clouds split beneath her thrashing wings, the sky itself scarred by her retreat. On the terraces below, the people cried out, not with terror, but in awe. Faces upturned, they watched their champions blaze against the abyss, the firmament itself aflame with silver, emerald, violet, and gold. The dragons of Vacari roared as one, the sound a hymn of defiance. Their wings flashed in radiant arcs, a living tapestry unfurling across the storm-racked sky. And as Varaxia writhed within the sundered light of Aurelia's storm, Varathos gathered herself once more. With a bone-shaking bellow, she hurled her massive form toward Aurelius. Hurricanes whipped from her wings, darkness streaming from her scales in choking rivers that painted the dawn like ink spilled across parchment. Her eyes glared with venomous resolve, fixed on the Celestial's burning form. However, the platinum dragons were already in motion. In flawless unison, they surged into her path, rider and dragon fused by will and bond. Their light-forged shields burst into radiant life, domes overlapping until they became a wall of living brilliance. Steel flashed as riders raised their blades, their battle cries weaving with the thunder of wings and the roars of dragons. Varathos slammed into them with the force of a falling mountain. Her claws raked across the shields, casting a storm of sparks. Crimson fire boiled from her jaws, pouring against the radiant barrier. Yet the domes held. Each impact flared brighter, as if the courage of the riders themselves fueled the ancient sigils carved into the shields. Aurelius soared above, his vast wings sweeping forward. Silver radiance cascaded down like a second dawn, bathing the defenders in divine fire. His calm presence steadied the line, and where despair had lurked, resolve burned brighter. Above them all, the clash of steel, light, fang, and shadow rolled through the skies like a war symphony. Lyra'el's defenders did not break. They did not falter. They became the wall. Vedantia and Amara carved through the storm, their wings cleaving the choking black mists that coiled across the battlefield. Emerald fire streamed from Vedantia's pinions in sweeping arcs, while Amara's amethyst blaze tore through the gloom like a rain of falling stars. Their flight carved radiant scars into the darkness, a defiance written in flame. On Vedantia's back, Thalorian rose tall and unshaken, the arbor blade glowing a fierce green in his grip, its edge thrumming with the pulse of the living wild. Across from him, Ong crouched low on Amara's neck, dragonlance poised, his stance braced against the storm, eyes blazing with resolve. Varathos lunged to meet them. Her abyssal wings drove her downward with savage force, claws stretched wide, void fire boiling between her fangs. The air itself buckled beneath the fury of her descent, the sky folding inward as though it were being dragged into her wake. Ong's voice rang out, raw and fierce, carrying across the storm like steel tearing stone. He rose and hurled the dragon lance. The weapon cut through the dark like a bolt of lightning, slamming beneath Varathos's front leg and embedding deep in her flesh. The impact was thunder, steel split scale and sinew. Black ichor burst forth in a scorching torrent, hissing as it rained across the shimmering dome below. Varathos roared, a sound so vast it rattled the crystal towers of Lyra'el and shook the mountains themselves. Her massive wings faltered, the rhythm of her dive shattered into chaos. The Lorien was already moving. The arbor blade swept out in a radiant arc, its emerald edge blazing with primal fury. Verdantia's roar merged with the song of the blade, a harmony that became a tide of green fire. The stroke ripped through the abyssal shadows trailing from Varathos's wound, shredding them into burning fragments that fell like smouldering leaves. The blast struck home. Varathos staggered, her colossal chest lit with emerald fire, the corruption on her scales peeled away in sizzling streams of black smoke. She reeled with a howl that split the storm, driven backward through the writhing dark. Above, the skies of Lyra'el convulsed with colliding forces. Silver radiance and abyssal shadow clashed in vast, whirling currents, tearing the heavens into a maelstrom of flame, light and void. Yet through the chaos, the defenders of Vacari held their formation. Wings gleamed like radiant banners. Blades flashed. Roars of defiance wove through the storm, each cry a vow. They would not yield. Not now. Not ever. High above, Varaxia and Varathos circled, their once regal forms battered and scarred. Smoke trailed from Varathos's wound, crimson mist swirling with her fury. Where they had counted on numbers and terror, they now saw ruin. Their dark flight reeled in disarray. Shadow dragons shrieked as radiant arrows pierced them, as emerald fire and violet flame tore their wings to tatters. Abyssal beasts spiraled toward the horizon, black ichor raining in their wake. The noble dragons of Vacari held the skies. Their united roars rolled like earthquakes through the crystal city, their radiant scales blazing as though the heavens themselves had descended to shield Lyra'el. Varaxia's eyes burned with venom, her malice pouring out in waves so hot it warped the air. She lashed her tail again and again, every stroke carving scars of darkness across the broken dawn. Beside her, Varathos hovered, chest still bleeding radiant wounds that smoked and hissed in the air. Her abyssal eyes burned cold, sharper than her sister's fire, calculating and cruel. She was already measuring not only the clash before her, but the war yet to come. The two dark titans drifted side by side, wings shuddering as they looked down upon the ruin of their scattered host. Shadowed dragons reeled through the air, some plummeting in flaming spirals, others limping back into the yawning black rift. What had descended as an unstoppable tide now looked ragged and broken.
We are not winning this,
Varaxia growled, her voice a serrated edge of fury. Varathos bared her fangs, abyssal fire curling at the corners of her mouth. Rage burned hot in her chest, but calculation pressed colder still. At last she dipped her massive head in a single reluctant nod.
Retreat.
Yet even as she spoke the word, her gaze cut toward the east. Her burning eyes locked on Keisha, astride Kimras, hatred coiling within them, sharp and merciless.
Next time,
she hissed, every syllable steeped in venom.
I will not leave without her. She will be taken one way or another.
Radiantus hovered in answer, his platinum scales ablaze with silver fire. His voice thundered like a vow carved into the bones of the world itself.
You will not touch her, not while any of us yet draw breath.
Kimras surged forward at his side, golden radiance igniting in his chest. With a roar that split the firmament, he loosed a jet of searing flame. The torrent arced outward, not at Varaxia or Varathos, but around Keisha. Fire and light coiled into a radiant halo, a blazing barrier that wrapped his rider in untouchable brilliance.
She is under my protection,
Kimras roared, golden light spilling from his jaws in a storm of defiance.
Any who threaten her will answer to me.
Amara swept up beside him, violet fire shimmering across her scales, her wings cutting the darkness with ruthless grace. Her mental voice rang sharp as steel.
Let them come. I would welcome the chance to remind them what happens when they dare to target one of ours.
Ong rose tall upon her back, dragon lance gleaming in the fractured light. His voice rang like iron driven into stone.
You already failed once. You won't get another chance.
Voraxia's vast wings beat the storm into submission as she turned away. Her snarl dripped venom, a final roar splitting the heavens.
This is not over, Radiantus. We will return.
From the battlefield's shattered heart, Radiantus ascended, his platinum wings unfurling into the dawn. His body blazed like a second sunrise, a vision of unyielding light. His thunderous vow rolled across Lyra'el.
And we will be waiting. We will drive you from Vacari, for you do not belong here.
Aurelius drew alongside, his vast silver wings scattering the last tatters of shadow. His eyes burned with steady fire, his voice a solemn hymn that rang like a temple bell through the broken skies.
Ispet, daut pliso nomeno, osiaci shiltati hupe malrak, where visuprageo confenecas lighten svadrav koitirik, mobigeo kethrik refuge, tangis pezek where drasonameco.
Tell your master this, shadows cannot hide forever. The truth will come to light, and when it does, there will be no refuge, even in the abyss.
The draconic challenge reverberated through the air like a tolling star bell, its echoes lingering even as the storm itself unravelled. Vorathos's colossal wings shivered, and Voraxia's hiss rose in furious denial. Yet neither dared remain. With a final echoing shriek, the Dark Sisters wheeled and vanished into the gaping rift, their broken host scattering after them like ash on the wind. For a long, breathless moment, silence reigned. The storm had passed. Lyra'el still trembled, its crystal towers veined with scars of fire and shadow. The air reeked of smoke and char, but the silver dome still held, burning like a promise against the sky. The city had endured. Radiantus hovered, his vast form haloed in fading brilliance, the weight of his vow lingering in the air. Aurelius glided at his side, silent but watchful, eyes like white moons fixed on the horizon where the rift had closed. All across the terraces, the people exhaled, their prayers dissolving into sobs and shouts of relief. Yet beneath the chorus of voices, beneath the thunder of retreating wings, Aurelius's words lingered in every heart. The enemy would return, and this time their master's face would not remain hidden. Radiantus turned at last, his immense wings catching the first true light of dawn. His voice rolled firm and clear, a beacon across the sky.
Return home to Lyra'el.
The war horns were silent now, their echoes fading into the wounded morning. Yet the spirit of unity still burned bright, unbroken, defiant. One by one, the defenders wheeled back toward the crystal terraces. The platinum dragons drew inward, their shields dimming as their riders lowered them at last. Verdantia and Thalorian descended in a spiral of emerald flame, while Amara and Ong cut through the thinning smoke, violet fire trailing in their wake. High above, Kimras and Keisha lingered a moment longer, golden flame still curling protectively around her like a living vow. Together they turned toward the radiant spires of the celestial city. Their wings beat as one, a tide of light returning to Lyra'el, battered, scarred, yet unbroken. Silence fell once more across the realm. But this was not the fragile hush of dawn. It was the silence after a storm, heavy with the breath of the weary, the echo of dragon wings, and the fragile rising promise of hope. For now the battle was ended, but in every heart a truth burned bright. It was only the beginning. Voraxia and Vorathos returned to Flameford beneath the shroud of night. Their vast wings beat the air in ragged strokes, slowed by blood and scarred by the fury of battle. The ruined fortress rose from the mountainside like a crown of jagged teeth, its blackened spires clawing upward into the darkness, shrouded by the eternal fog that draped the land like a funeral veil. From the fortress's hollow heart, the mysterious figure stirred. They rose from a throne of carved obsidian, their steps unhurried as they glided through the labyrinth of ruined corridors. Shadows bent close, curling about their form like obedient serpents, eager to whisper of the dragon's return. They did not need to see it. They had already felt the sting of defeat echo through the void. Varaxia landed first. Her claws scraped sparks from the fractured stone, her vast wings folding with a sound like tearing storms. Rivers of faint silver light marred the onyx sheen of her scales, the lingering scar where Gylon's crystal arrow had struck. His name seared her mind like a thorn she could not dislodge. One arrow, one insolent mortal with a dragon at his back, and shame burned hotter than fire in her veins. Behind her, Vorathos descended. Slower, heavier. Black ichor trailed in smoking rivulets from the wound beneath her front leg, the sear of the dragonlance's magic refusing to fade. She hit the ground with such force the mountain shuddered, her wings folding raggedly as she steadied herself with a guttural snarl. The figure awaited them, cloaked in shadow, unmoved by the restless wind that prowled the broken hall. Their voice was low, measured, and colder than the stone walls around them.
You are injured. Explain.
Varaxia's breath came sharp, a hiss like steel drawn across bone.
We underestimated them. The elf Keisha is not only alive, but healed. She rode into battle upon Kimras, and her magic burned brighter than before.
The shadows coiling around the figure writhed, dark flame licking up the cavern walls, but still the hooded presence gave no reply. Vorathos lowered her massive head, her growl rumbling like avalanches in the deep.
It was not just Kimras. We faced Aurelia, the crystal dragon, Verdantia, the emerald, Amara, the amethyst. None of this was foretold. Their strength was considerable.
The cavern fell into silence, stretched so taut it seemed ready to shatter. Then, through the choking darkness, another voice stirred. Not born of a dragon's throat or stone, but riding on unseen currents of light. Calm, radiant, unyielding.
Shadows cannot hide forever. The truth will come to light, and when it does, there will be no refuge, even in the abyss.
Aurelius's vow still lingered, echoing across realms. The figure's hooded head lifted, eyes flaring like coals stoked to sudden flame. For the first time, the shadows themselves shivered, recoiling as if scorched. A growl rolled from the figure's chest, low at first, then swelling until it rattled the cavern stones.
You were meant to destroy Lyra'el, not return broken and full of excuses.
Varaxia did not bow. She reared her head, hatred seeping from every word.
You called us from the void, yes, but you withheld the truth. These noble dragons are not as they were. The Celestial's power makes them more than wing and flame.
Vorathos' voice was ground low and jagged, thick with pain.
And their bonds, the elf, and the human with the lance. It is not natural. It should not be possible. Yet together they were more than we could break.
The figure's eyes flared brighter, burning with a silence that weighed heavier than their words. It was not the retreat that unsettled them most, but the echo of Aurelius's warning gnawing at the edges of the dark. At last, the shadows stilled. The figure's voice came soft and deadly, a whisper that carried like a command.
Enough. Go to the cavern of ash. The time has come for a change that will touch every dark dragon.
The air thickened, and the shadows themselves pulsed with the promise of what was to come. Varaxia turned, claws screeching against the cracked stone as she lumbered toward the jagged path that tunneled into the mountain's heart. Anticipation burned in her gaze, sharp and venomous. Vorathos followed, limping, her colossal frame dragging shadows with every step. Yet before she entered the passage, she cast one last look back, not with loyalty, but with the smouldering suspicion of a predator gauging its master. The mysterious figure did not move. They stood in the cavern's center, half swallowed by living shadow, their cloak untouched by the restless wind that prowled the ruined halls. Eyes glowed like embers in the dark, their silence heavier than stone. And in that silence, Aurelius's vow lingered still as a spark of light that would not die. Soon the shadows would no longer be enough. Soon the master's face would be revealed. The cavern of ash swallowed them whole. Its vast hollow chamber yawned from the mountain's heart, its jagged black walls veined with molten fire that bled like open wounds. Every sound echoed the scrape of claws across basalt, the hiss of shadow flame fading, the slow drip of burning stone into pools of smoking ash. Already, the host had gathered. Shadow and abyssal dragons coiled among the crags and ledges, their wings tattered, their maws still steaming. The air was thick with the copper sting of blood and the reek of charred stone. From his perch upon a shattered ridge of volcanic rock, Zilron stirred, his colossal bulk shifting with a grinding groan. Heat shimmered from his crimson scales, staining the cavern in waves of scarlet light. His crimson eyes narrowed, and a rumble of cruel amusement rolled from his chest.
"Oh, how the mighty return,"
he growled, his voice rough with mockery.
"I thought you two were beyond defeat."
Voraxia's snarl cracked like a whip across the chamber, her claws gouging furrows in the stone. Her tattered wings twitched, her onyx scales shivering with fury. She snapped her gaze toward Zilron, venom blazing, her chest swelling as though ready to loose either a retort or a killing blast. Before the words could fall from her tongue, the shadows stirred. The cavern darkened. Black fire along the walls dimmed, recoiling into deeper currents. From the heart of the hollow stepped the mysterious figure, the gloom folding around them like a living mantle. They did not stride. They drifted, their presence heavier than the mountain's weight. Silence fell like a guillotine. Zilron's laughter choked into stillness. The vast wings of abyssal and shadow dragons stiffened, their fury smothered beneath the crushing gravity of that presence. Shadows bowed. Even the air seemed to withhold its breath. No one spoke, not even Zilron. The figure halted at the center of the cavern. Their voice emerged slowly and deliberately, each word dropping like a stone into the silence.
"I have been in contact with 2 more who will join the Dominion. One master of illusions and deceit, the other of thunderous precision, once sworn to the light. Their arrival will shift the balance once more."
From the deeper dark, Nocturna stirred. Her obsidian scales gleamed with a mirror-dark sheen, fractured light sliding across her form like shards of night. Her tail lashed once, a whisper of contempt sharpening her voice.
"Who are they?"
"The Mirage Dragon,"
the figure intoned.
"and the Topaz Dragon."
A ripple of unease coursed through the chamber. Vorathos tilted her massive head, voice rasping with disbelief.
"Topaz, that is a gem dragon. I thought they bent me only to the light."
Nocturna's eyes flared like twin void lanterns. Her head snapped toward the wounded sisters, shadows bristling off her scales in silent accusation.
"So am I. Yet not all gem dragons are bound to light. Unlike you, my sisters, I have already left my mark. Aurelia still carries the wound I gave her. You,"
her voice dripped scorn,
"did not even touch Radiantus or his celestial kin."
Voraxia's wings flared violently, her snarl echoing off the cavern's scorched walls. For a breath, the cavern of ash quaked with the threat of civil war, the air vibrating with the promise of unleashed wrath. Then Glaceria exhaled from her frozen perch, a plume of frost spilling across the heat-hazed air, hissing against molten stone. Her words fell sharp as breaking ice.
"Thundria, the Topaz Dragon, once bent the knee to Varus and Phoenix. Do you not remember her screams when Aurelia cast her down in the battle for Vacari?"
The reminder rang like a crack through silence. The cavern quieted, every shadowed gaze turning back toward the cloaked figure at its center. They inclined their hooded head, the hush deepening until even the molten drip seemed to still. Shadows coiled tighter, pulsing as though the void itself awaited judgment. From his perch of broken basalt, Zilron shattered the silence with a contemptuous snort. Sparks spat from his nostrils, scattering across the ash-strewn floor like falling stars. The cavern rumbled faintly with the weight of his voice.
"Where are they to dwell? Flameford can scarcely contain those of us already bound here."
The figure did not flinch. Cloaked in living darkness, they lifted one hand, and the shadows drew tighter, curling around their form as though to shield them from even the question.
"That has been accounted for. Your kin will remain in their own domains. Only the ancients shall linger in Flameford, and only when summoned for counsel.
Satisfaction gleamed in Zilron's crimson eyes. He arched his neck, exhaling a plume of smoke that rolled along the ceiling in waves of scarlet haze.
Good. I have longed for the volcanic peaks of Felthalor. They remember my name in fire.
Across the cavern, Glyceria shifted upon her frozen spire. Frost whispered from her scales, veiling her in ghostly mist. She lifted her head with slow, regal grace, her voice a blade of glacial steel.
Then my kin shall return to the snowbound reaches of Friornac. The frozen spires have waited long enough.
Her breath curled into spirals of white, hissing as it kissed the molten stone. Varaxia let her ragged wings ripple in disdain.
Retreating already to your precious peaks? That place has always felt like another world.
Glaceria did not spare her a glance. A shard of ice dropped from her jaws, striking the black stone floor and fracturing in a sharp, crystalline crack.
It is no other world. Friornac is Vacari's own veil of frost, endless, living, eternal. Unlike your abyss, where shadow stagnates and even ruin rots in silence.
The words fell like winter's weight. Frost spread in jagged veins across the cavern walls, and the air plunged to a biting chill. A ripple of unease moved through the shadowed host, wings folding tighter, dark fire guttering low as the cold gnawed at the stone. The mysterious figure's voice cut through the silence at last, resonant and iron-bound.
When you are called, you will come. There will be no hesitation, no delay. The age of waiting is ended.
One by one, the dark dragons lowered their heads, the scrape of scale on stone echoing like chains drawn taut. Pride gave way to submission beneath the crushing presence at the cavern's heart. Only Nocturna held her gaze steady. Not in defiance, but in thought. Her mirror-dark eyes glinting with secrets she chose not to share. She would watch, and she would remember. The figure stepped forward, shadows curling higher, their presence pressing against every stone. Their voice rang sharper now, slicing through the cavern's air.
Keisha lives, and her magic burns stronger than before.
Glaceria's head rose, frost steaming from her jaws. Her eyes glimmered with cruel satisfaction, her tone edged in crystalline pride.
Then perhaps I am the one to end her. I nearly froze the elf to death once. If anyone knows how to finish her, it is I.
Voratos's snarl cut through the chamber, venom dripping from every syllable as she prowled a step closer.
You had your chance and failed. You think your ice alone can break her bond with the Golden One.
Above, Zilron shifted, crimson eyes flashing. His tail lashed against the stone, sparks scattering like meteors. A mocking laugh coiled in his throat, ready to twist Glaceria's boast into another barb against the sisters. But the mysterious figure's word struck first.
Enough!
The command split the cavern like a blade. Shadows erupted from every crevice, writhing up the jagged walls, spilling across the floor in a living tide. They coiled around colossal limbs and talons, cold and merciless, strangling even the dragon's roars into silence. In that crushing stillness, the Dominion bent its neck beneath the master's will.
This is not about pride,
the figure intoned, their voice a thunderous whisper.
It is about elimination. Keisha lives, and that is a failure borne by all of you. If she appears again, she is to be destroyed. I care not who claims the kill.
A tense silence followed. Zilron's tail froze mid-swing, molten sparks dying on the stone. Glaceria's breath hissed between bared fangs, frost spiraling from her nostrils in restrained fury. Even Nocturna's obsidian eyes narrowed, unreadable yet intent. The rivalries that had filled the cavern only moments before dissolved like smoke, replaced by something darker. A grim unity settled across the chamber. Heavy as falling ash, suffocating as the shadows that pressed in from every wall, it wrapped the gathered host in a single, terrible purpose. A low chorus of growls rumbled through the hollow, not defiance, but assent. The sound shook the cavern like a vow carved into stone. The figure's gaze swept the assembly, their words cold and precise.
Lyra moves in A4, extending the Dominion's reach among the desert kingdoms. Kellan binds the pirates of Shadowhaven to our cause. The net tightens.
A ripple passed through the gathered dragons, wings shifting uneasily, but none dared voice dissent.
From this night forward, we strike in shadows,
the figure declared.
Skirmishes across Vacari. Let them scatter their strength, chasing ghosts. Let Kimras, Aurelia, and their allies bleed themselves thin. When the next true battle comes, they will stand divided, and we will break them.
They lifted a hand toward the jagged arch of the cavern. At once the shadows surged upward, writhing like a vast living tide.
Go. Be ready. The next tide rises soon.
One by one, the dark dragons withdrew into the black, their colossal forms swallowed by the abyssal dark. No mocking laughter followed them. No proud defiance lingered. For the first time since their return, the dark dragons bowed not to pride, but to purpose. From the heart of Flameford, a single will coiled around them all. The mysterious figure remained as the last wing vanished into the abyssal dark. The cavern was empty, but for the whisper of shadows, and still they lingered, their eyes burning like coals beneath the hoods. For a moment, silence reigned. Then the figure turned sharply and strode toward the tower that speared upward from the ruined fortress. Each step echoed like a tolling bell, the shadows surging in agitation around them. At the base of the obsidian stair, they halted, head thrown back, and their voice erupted in a scream that split the dark. The sound was not command this time, but fury, raw, unbound, a tempest of wrath that shook loose shards of stone from the cavern walls.
Keisha yet lives!
The figure roared into the shadows, their voice rising until it broke into a jagged cry. The words reverberated through the abyss, searing with venom.
She defies us, still she dares to endure.
The cloak of darkness lashed out, striking the ground, clawing at the air like a wounded beast.
No matter the cost, no matter who else falls, that elf will die. Even if the Dominion itself must burn, she will fall.
The oath was not spoken to the dragons, for they had already departed. It was hurled into the abyss, into the waiting silence of the rift. And the abyss answered. From the void came a whisper, vast and terrible, echoing like fire beneath the sea.
You will see that she does.
The figure stilled, shadows tightening about them like armor. A slow smile curved beneath the hood, jagged and cold.
So be it,
they murmured, their voice dripping with malice.
The age of light ends. The Dominion shall rise anew.
Outside, the mountain shuddered, and the cavern of ash groaned like a living thing. Darkness swelled, rolling outward in a tide that clawed across the horizon. The realm of Vacari lay beneath its spreading shadow, unaware that the true master of the Dominion had spoken, and their war had only just begun. High atop one of Lyra'el's crystalline watchtowers, Caelorn stood with his staff braced against the carved railing, his gaze fixed on the horizon where night still clung to the sky. His robes stirred in the fading wind as he tracked the last vestiges of shadow retreating into the distance. Far beyond the mountain ridges, Voraxia and Vorothos, bloodied and furious, vanished at last into the dark. A long breath escaped him, weighted with both weariness and fragile relief.
They are leaving,
he murmured, his voice scarcely louder than the whisper of the dawn breeze. His hand pressed against the runestone embedded in the tower's edge. The ward flared faintly beneath his touch, then resonated with his command.
Lower the shield, the dragons return, the battle is won for now.
Across the mountain tops, a hush swept outward. followed by the deep, resonant hum of the wards unwinding. The dome of silver light encircling Lyra'el quivered, then dissolved. Its translucent threads unravelled into the brightening sky, a final pulse of magic rippling outward like a sigh that washed the valley in light. The air hung thick with the acrid tang of scorched shadow, but beneath it breathed the sweet, tentative promise of morning. From the terraces below, horns rang out, not the blaring alarm of battle, but the swelling chorus of victory. Relief rippled through the city. Doors opened. Voices rose. The people of Lyra'el emerged from towers and sanctums, from healing halls and fortified caverns. The city exhaled as one. And then, gilded by the first golden light of dawn, the noble dragons descended. They swept down in radiant arcs, vast wings kindled by dawnfire, their gleaming forms spiraling toward the crystal terraces. Cheers erupted, echoing against the mountainsides. The sound mingled with cries of joy and the ragged sobs of relief. Kimras landed first, his golden scales streaked with soot, ember glow lingering across his chest. Keisha sat steadily astride him, her green eyes searching the crowd not for celebration, but for the measure of loss. Behind them came Amara with Ong, violet fire dimmed yet steady in her wings. Verdantia descended in a rush of emerald flame, Thalorian poised tall upon her back, the arbor blade glinting faintly at his side. Aurelia followed, crystalline light scattering in her wake, Prince Gylon astride her with the crystal bow glowing faintly upon his shoulder. Last came Radiantus, gleaming and unbowed, with Talira seated firmly behind the silver ridges of his mane. The moment talons struck Sanctum Stone, the people surged forward. Applause thundered. Healers rushed in, bowing low before tending to scorched scales and battered wings. Children darted through the crowd, laughter carrying on the morning air as they pressed flowers into outstretched talons. One elven child placed a bloom in Radiantus's claw. The platinum dragon bent low, eyes gleaming with warmth that softened even the hardened sanctum. From the watchtower, Kalorn descended. His staff hummed softly, the runes whispering as ash and starlight twined on the breeze. Gratitude swelled in his chest, but unease shadowed it. Even the wards seemed to murmur of what lingered beyond, of peace fragile as spun glass. One by one the riders dismounted. Ong reached for Keisha, drawing her into an embrace. She leaned into him. Her smile was weary but resolute. Gylon extended his hand to Thalorian, who clasped it firmly, a soldier's nod passing between them. For this moment it was enough. They had held the line. Darkness had been driven back. But above, the noble dragons raised their gazes to the horizon. Their eyes reflected no triumph, only the weight of knowing. Between their riders, silent glances passed. Acknowledgement of the same truth. This was not the end. Only a pause, only a breath. And for today, that breath would be honored. As the first waves of celebration ebbed into softer murmurs and grateful embraces, Prince Gylon and Thalorian stepped aside from the gathering. Their boots struck quiet notes against the polished crystal floor of Lyra'el's inner sanctum, muted beneath the faint hum of magic still clinging to the air. Nearby, Radiantus conversed with one of the elders, his vast silvered form radiant in the dawn. As the two riders approached, the platinum dragon turned, his gaze steady and grave. Thalorian bowed his head in respect, his green cloak still charred along its edges.
Radiantus, the battle may be done, but we both feel the call of our realms.
Gylon stood at his side, his voice calm but unwavering.
Crystal Vale and the Emerald Woods cannot remain unguarded. The dark dragons may have retreated, but their reach is not ended.
Radiantus regarded them with solemn eyes, dawnlight glinting across his ridged scales.
You are right. Vacari remains a battlefield, even in silence. Thank you for your valor for fighting with honor. Keep your lands vigilant. We will send word if the Dominion stirs again.
We'll be ready,
Thalorian vowed.
As will I,
Gylon added, his hand brushing the crystal bow at his shoulder, as though renewing a silent oath with its touch. The two parted from Radiantus and made their final rounds. weaving through the quiet corridors toward the sanctum's edge. There, Caelorn stood with Valion, the younger man balancing crates of potions and salves while speaking to a medic about supplies. Caelorn glanced up as Thalorian neared.
Heading back to the Emerald Woods.
Thalorian inclined his head.
Now that the skies are clear, the roots of the forest already stir.
A thoughtful smile tugged at Caelorn's lips.
Then, may I join you? I must return to Luminara. The fairies must hear of what transpired, and there are matters of light magic awaiting me.
You are always welcome,
Thalorian said warmly, clasping his shoulder.
We depart within the hour.
Caelorn turned to Valion, his tone softening. He offered a small, affectionate bow.
Keep your eyes sharp and try not to burn through the potions this time.
Valion snorted, lifting a hand in mock salute.
Just don't let the fairies weave leaves in your hair again.
Caelorn's chuckle followed him as he fell into step with Thalorian down the central passage. Outside, Verdantia waited, emerald wings lifting into the morning breeze. Dawnlight shimmered along her scales as she spread them wide. The earth beneath her claws hummed in recognition, the forest calling to the forest. In moments, she bore them aloft. Their flight arced high, gilded in gold, before angling toward the distant canopy of the Emerald Woods, the living heart of Vacari. The wind carried them swiftly, their shadows sliding across mountain and cloud alike. Yet beneath the rush of air lingered the memory of darkness, a reminder etched in every beat of wing. Though their skies were clear, the Dominion's storm was far from ended. Caelorn lingered behind, his gaze still anchored to the horizon. His departure would come soon, but not yet. He walked through the softened light of Lyra'el's courtyard, where celebration had dwindled into quiet farewells. There, he found Ong and Keisha beside Kimras. The golden ancient rested with wings half-folded, his eyes half-lidded, yet vigilant, molten depths never straying far from his rider.
I wanted to speak with you before I left,
Caelorn said as he approached, his voice low but steady.
With the Dominion name rising again, I know that must weigh heavily on you both.
Keisha's gaze flicked toward Ong, then back to Caelorn. She stepped forward, her eyes calm yet unyielding.
The name is something I hoped never to hear again, but it no longer frightens me. They did their worst years ago, and in doing so, they taught me something they never intended.
Her chin lifted, her voice clear.
That I was never truly alone.
Ong's arm slipped around her shoulders, drawing her close. His expression remained guarded, but the warmth of the gesture spoke louder than words. For a moment, Caelorn's breath caught. Then he spoke softly, almost reverently.
You're my sister, Keisha, and they will never break that.
Her eyes softened, a quiet smile curving her lips. She gave him a slight nod and leaned into Ong's embrace, her head resting lightly against his shoulder. Resolve sharpened in Caelorn's eyes.
Then it's clear they've underestimated the wrong people.
He drew a steady breath.
I must return to Crystal Vale. The dragons there already sense the power shift. I need to be sure they remain safe.
Ong clasped his shoulder firmly.
Tell our father I'm well, and if you need anything, call.
I will,
Caelorn replied with a faint smile. His gaze shifted toward Valion, who stood beneath a crystal arch, arms full of supplies being stowed away.
Leaving so soon?
Valion asked as he stepped forward.
Time to return home,
Caelorn answered. Without a word, Valion reached into his satchel and pressed a small silver vial into Caelorn's hand. Caelorn raised a brow.
A farewell gift.
A potion I brewed,
Valion said, his mouth quirking.
Don't worry, you won't turn into a fairy.
A chuckle escaped Caelorn.
A pity. I hear they have better fortune in battle.
Valion smirked, though his tone softened.
Perhaps, but Lyra'el needs healers. For now, I'll remain. Besides, when I come to Crystal Vale, it will be on a dragon's back. Traveling the skies is safer these days.
This time, Caelorn's laughter came freer, the weight in his chest easing.
You've changed.
So have we all,
Valion answered quietly. With a final nod, Caelorn turned toward Aurelia waiting at the sanctum's edge. Her crystalline hide shimmered with living light as she extended one vast wing in invitation. He mounted the crystal bow resting against his back. Before she leapt skyward, he glanced once more at those gathered below. Ong and Keisha side by side, Valion beneath the archway and Kimras watching with steady molten eyes. Then Aurelia sprang aloft, wings carving through the morning mist. Sunlight fractured across her crystalline scales as she bore them upward, carrying Gylon homeward toward Crystal Vale and the battles yet to come. Kimras stretched his vast wings in a slow, deliberate sweep, golden light rippling across their ember-streaked span. His gaze lowered to Keisha, warm and unwavering.
We'll return to Goldmoor for now. Amara will take wing for Purplefire Woods, but the two of you,
his voice softened, rumbling with quiet care,
should return home to Everhona for a time, rest, and perhaps check on Pumpkin. I suspect she will not be pleased to have been left behind again.
Keisha laughed, the sound breaking through the weight that had pressed on her chest since the battle. A memory surfaced. Pumpkin perched indignantly atop the crystal roof of Everhona, tail lashing, eyes narrowed in feline accusation, the last time they dared to leave her behind.
You're probably right.
She stepped forward, arms encircling Kimras's neck, her cheek pressed against his warm scales, the steady hum of his golden fire vibrating beneath her palms. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. They didn't need to. He had felt her pain in the fight, the sharp echo of her wound lancing through his chest, and she knew he still carried that fear within him. Their silence was not emptiness, but communion, a bond stronger than oath or vow.
See you soon, my friend,
she whispered, her voice tender, more promise than parting. Kimras rumbled deep in his chest, a resonance of reassurance and farewell. His golden eyes lingered on her, fierce with the same unyielding protectiveness that had once driven him to roar into Voraxia's face. Do not threaten my dragon rider. Beside him, Amara curved her sleek amethyst neck toward Ong, violet eyes alight with sly amusement.
Stay out of trouble,
she teased, her voice smooth as silk.
And try to keep your feet on the ground for once. Though I suspect even gravity has surrendered to you.
Ong smirked, shaking his head.
No promises.
Amara's purr rolled like distant thunder.
Keisha, do keep him alive. He grows reckless when he believes no one is watching.
Ong gave a low chuckle, not bothering to deny it. With a final shared nod, the two noble dragons unfurled their wings. Sunlight caught on amethyst and gold as they rose together, climbing high into the brightening sky. Their roars rang out once, not as a challenge, but as a farewell, before they veered apart, one toward Goldmoor, the other toward Purplefire Woods. Their part in this battle was fulfilled. In their absence, silence draped itself once more across Lyra'el, a fragile peace settling over the crystal city like morning mist. Lord Karanin approached, his robes whispering against the crystal floor. He paused, expression shadowed by thought, as though weighing his words before letting them fall.
One thing before we go,
he said at last, his tone carrying quiet urgency. His gaze lifted to Radiantus.
The Sylvan Elves of the Ivory Moonbeams sent word that Kelon passed through their woods not long ago. They could not mark his destination, but his presence that far north, it bears watching.
A ripple of unease stirred among those who heard the name. Radiantus's diamond-like silver eyes narrowed, dawnlight striking them like tempered steel. His voice remained calm, but iron threaded every syllable.
He travels with caution, but not without purpose. I will have our scouts remain vigilant. If he moves again, I will know.
The words lingered sharp as drawn blades before silence reclaimed the sanctum. Lord Karanin gave a slight nod, his thoughts already shifting toward the next duty. Yet before he turned away, his hand slipped into the folds of his cloak. From the shadows of the fabric, a narrow, curious face emerged. A fox, its fur pale copper streaked with ember tones, shimmering faintly, as though sparks danced beneath its pelt. Golden eyes blinked up with calm audacity, unafraid even beneath the looming presence of dragons.
One more thing,
Karanin said, stepping toward Valion. He carefully set the creature into the young man's arms.
You've earned a measure of mischief and perhaps companionship.
Valion froze, uncertain, staring down at the warm bundle curling against his chest. The fox nosed at the strap of his satchel, its tail brushing lazily along his side, as if it had already claimed the place as its own.
This isn't tradition,
Valion said flatly. Yet even as the words left him, his fingers tightened protectively around the animal, the instinct undeniable. Beneath his sarcasm stirred something quieter, an ember of comfort he had not expected. Karenin raised a brow, dry amusement flickering in his gaze.
It is now.
Keisha laughed, her eyes alight.
A fox, really?
Ong folded his arms, his voice as steady as stone.
We've had panthers, wolves, and hawks. Why not a fox? It suits him.
The fox licked Valion's thumb, then gave a decisive thump of its tail against his ribs, as though sealing the claim.
I'm not naming you,
Valion muttered. Thump. Keisha grinned, delighted.
Oh, you will.
Ong smirked, his voice dry with certainty.
And when you do, we'll all pretend to be surprised.
Valion scowled, though the faintest twitch of a smile betrayed him. Karenin turned last to Ong and Keisha, his robes rippling faintly with the fading hum of protective wards. His gaze lingered on them, measuring not only their strength, but the weariness etched beneath it.
Are you ready to return?
He asked softly. They nodded in unison. Karenin lifted his staff. Light whispered into being, threads unfurling like silver leaves caught in an unseen breeze. In the span of a heartbeat, the sanctum of Lyra'el dissolved into radiance, then gave way to the tranquil embrace of Everhona. Home. The air was gentler here, cool and fragrant with the scent of blossoms. The murmur of hidden streams threaded through the underbrush, and shafts of sunlight dappled the crystal paths, dancing across the ground in shifting beams. Birds sang faintly from the canopy, and branches swayed as though bowing in greeting. Ong exhaled slowly, his hand brushing against Keisha's. She leaned into him, her steps easing as her gaze softened at the sight of their sanctuary rising between the trees. For now, the fighting has ended. The shadows had been pushed back but not destroyed. Darkness still stirred beyond the horizon, plotting in silence. Yet here, within this breath of peace, Ong and Keisha stood side by side, not bound by battle, but by belonging. For this fleeting moment there was rest, and they would hold to it, before the storm returned. Radiantus stood at the terrace's edge, his vast form outlined against the golden glow of morning. Below, Lyra'el breathed in fragile peace. The cheers had dwindled to murmurs. Healers moved with quiet urgency, and families clung to one another amidst the softened hum of recovery. Yet beyond the horizon, the air remained heavy, thick with storms not yet broken. Tahlira approached with measured steps, her armor scuffed and streaked from battle. Her stance held firm, though her eyes betrayed hesitation. She lingered at his side, uncertain what words the great platinum would speak. Radiantus lowered his head until his silver gaze met hers. His voice rumbled deep, carrying both warmth and gravity.
You fought bravely, Tahlira. You did well as my rider.
Her shoulders straightened, pride flickering in her weary eyes. But his gaze sharpened, tempered steel beneath the praise.
The truth is, you need more training. All of you do. This battle was but the beginning. The next will demand more than valor alone.
Tahlira swallowed, her pride steadied by the weight of his warning. She bowed her head, one hand brushing against his gleaming scales.
I'll train. I'll rise to whatever you ask. I remembered what you told me when the shadows closed in. You said to hold fast. I did, and I will again.
A low rumble of approval rolled from his chest. Radiantus extended one vast wing, curving it around her like a vow.
Then we are bound not only by circumstance but by choice.
Her eyes lifted, steady now.
Then I am yours. Until the end.
As she turned to adjust the saddle, her hand brushed something she had not noticed before. Tucked into the leather straps was a length of ribbon, woven in deep amethyst purple. She drew it out slowly, realization dawning. Keisha's gift. Tahlira's breath caught. Her fingers curled gently around the ribbon, as if it were more fragile than glass. With careful hands, she tied it into her braid, the amethyst gleam catching the light of dawn. Radiantus's gaze softened, pride warming his tone.
A rider's welcome,
he murmured.
You are no longer alone, Tahlira. You stand among them now.
And for the first time, She allowed herself a smile unshadowed by doubt. Simple, bright, and wholly her own. Radiantus's gaze lingered on the amethyst ribbon glinting in her braid, pride warming the silver of his eyes. Then his attention shifted toward the courtyard below, where Valion stood with the copper fox curled stubbornly in his arms.
"There is one more matter,"
Radiantus rumbled, his tone dipping into dry amusement.
"I have yet to introduce you properly to another of Lyra'el's defenders. Do you remember the one I spoke of? The young man who tends to blow things up even without a weapon in hand?"
Tahlira blinked, then followed his gaze downward. Valion was attempting to coax the fox into his satchel, only for the creature to wriggle free and thump its tail against his ribs in triumph. Her lips quirked despite herself.
"That would be him?"
she asked carefully. Radiantus's chest vibrated with a low chuckle.
"Indeed, Valion. He has grown since the last time we spoke of him. Perhaps not in restraint, but in heart, and it is time you met him."
He lowered his wing, signaling her to follow. Together, they descended toward the courtyard where Valion wrestled with the fox's stubborn antics. The creature wriggled in his arms, thumping his tail against his ribs in decisive victory as Valion muttered under his breath. Radiantus's voice carried a thread of dry amusement.
"Tahlira, this is Valion, alchemist, healer, and on occasion a walking explosion. Valion, this is Tahlira, my chosen rider."
Valion glanced up, cheeks flushing faintly as the fox shifted in his grasp.
"Walking explosion, that's generous."
Still, he inclined his head with polite respect.
"An honor."
Tahlira straightened, her braid gleaming with Keisha's ribbon.
"The honor is mine. Any who stands with Lyra'el earns my respect."
The fox gave another decisive thump of its tail, as though seconding the introduction. For a moment, laughter softened the weight of battle, binding rider, dragon, and ally in a fragile yet growing unity. Radiantus turned outward once more, his vast wings shifting as his gaze swept across the crystalline towers and shining walkways of Lyra'el. The city glimmered in dawn's embrace, but its radiance felt fragile-like, a flame cupped against the wind. Across the sanctum, Aurelius stood tall, starlight shimmering faintly along his argent scales. For a long moment, silence bridged the distance between them. Their eyes met silver and celestial, and in that exchange lay more than acknowledgement. It was a vow that the shadows would not remain hidden forever, that the Dominion's master, cloaked and nameless, would be revealed. That truth would blaze where deception reigned. Both dragons inclined their heads, the gesture heavy with unity and unspoken strategy. This was not peace. This was preparation. And when the darkness rose again, Lyra'el would not stand alone. They would rise together. The air in Everhona was warm with the scent of wildflowers and distant rain. Evening draped the trees in a silver glow, each leaf shimmering as though the forest itself welcomed its guardians home. Keisha stepped onto the elevated crystal bridge, its surface gleaming like diamonds suspended above the forest floor. Light fractured beneath her feet as Ong walked at her side. She had barely drawn a second breath of peace when a low growl rolled from the shadows near their cottage.
"I told you she'd be waiting,"
Ong muttered. From an arching limb above, two green eyes appeared fiery, unblinking. Pumpkin, the black panther who had once defied dragons, emerged from the shadows. She radiated an offended majesty, her sleek form coiled in silent accusation. Muscles rippled beneath her midnight fur, her tail lashing once in judgment. She did not pounce. She did not purr. She turned, sat, and very deliberately faced away from them.
"Pumpkin."
Keisha stepped closer, voice soft, uncertain. The tail flicked, once, twice.
"She's ignoring you,"
Ong observed dryly.
"That's worse than roaring."
"I know."
Keisha sighed, her shoulders slumping.
"She's very dramatic."
"She's your companion,"
Ong reminded her. Keisha arched a brow.
"Our companion. You say that every time she steals your side of the fire."
"Traitor,"
Ong grunted. Smiling faintly, Keisha knelt and unbuckled the pouch at her belt. She drew out a small bundle wrapped in silk and held it forward.
I brought you something from Lyra'el. Enchanted deer jerky. Blessed it in the light.
Pumpkin's ears twitched. Slowly, with regal disdain, she turned her head. A pause. A flick of her tail. Then she padded down from the limb, moving with silent grace. With theatrical reluctance, she accepted the jerky, crunching it once before pressing her great head against Keisha's shoulder. A low, rumbling purr vibrated through her chest, a mix of forgiveness and reproach. Keisha buried her face in the familiar fur, her eyes closing.
I missed you too.
Pumpkin's green gaze slid toward Ong, offering him a pointed, almost smug glance before she settled firmly between them, curling her tail like a warding line.
Ong exhaled in defeat. We've been replaced.
Keisha laughed, the sound soft but genuine.
No, we've been forgiven. For now.
As the first stars bloomed above the forest canopy, the three of them sat together on the glowing path before their home guardian, healer, and the black-furred shadow, who would never again be left behind. Ong lifted his gaze to the heavens, then down the winding path that vanished into the trees. His voice was quiet, but sure.
Peace never lasts long, but that won't stop us from savoring it.
Far beyond the tranquil glade, in the hidden reaches where the Dominion's grip still lingered, the darkness stirred anew, waiting for its hour to strike.
Professional audiobooks in a click.
Spoken.